Arpon Basu was recently answering fan questions on Reddit, and one question about the Habs' most likely trade candidates this year came up, and Basu revealed who he believes to be the number one pending unrestricted free agent that Montreal will trade. And he also mentioned a guy that, we shouldn't be surprised if Montreal re-signs for a couple more seasons. We got to dive into all of that. Plus, Pierre Lebrun on BPM Sport revealed that Jacob Fowler's name was in the Yaroslav Askarov trade discussions. That plus another little quote about Laine from Pascal Vincent, all coming up on this episode of Habs Digest. But guys, you know what's coming. Skip it if you want to, but half of you guys watching this video are not subscribed. Those are the percentages. They're barely changing. We're trying to hit 15,000 before the season. I know it's a crazy goal. We got 2 weeks, and I know you guys can help us get there. So if you want to help us out, we'd really appreciate it. Not going to dwell on that. Time to get into the video. Pascal Vincent doubles down. Now, he's been talking a lot about Patrik Laine, and it makes a ton of sense. Jesse, of course, he's been Patrik Laine's coach in some capacity for, I think, longer than people realize. Like, it wasn't just Columbus. It was in Winnipeg as well, as an assistant coach, all this stuff. But he was recently on BPM Sport on a little podcast. This will be linked down below if you want to have a listen to it. It's great stuff. But I wanted to bring up some quotes from that, mainly one quote. He said, "I've known Patrik a long time in Winnipeg and Columbus. Right now, he said, based on what he's seeing right now, I see the kid who I met when he was 18, who was excited to play in the NHL and to play hockey. He is the most talented player I've ever coached." Now, he said that talented thing before, Jesse, but to hear that he is seeing Patrik Laine in the same light that he saw him when Laine was just entering the league with that energy, that excitedness to play hockey is really awesome to hear. And, it just seems like, by all accounts, Patrik Laine is absolutely loving the situation.
Yeah, it's so funny how this whole situation went down because they asked Pascal Vincent even before this trade, do you think that this is a smart move to get Laine? And we now know that the answer was a resounding yes. So just the fact that, he's so excited to be in here, like just being around people that love hockey, you have to feel like Patrik Laine is going to use that passion from this fan base, from this organization to really propel himself. Like he's looking at being like a new player, like it's still the same Patrik Laine, but now a new version. He's switching his number to 92. He kind of wants to have that fresh start. So, I mean, this is unbelievable praise, from Pascal Vincent, but, not just him. We're hearing it like from all corners right now. Like even Kirby Dach said that Patrik Laine has the best shot, Josh, that he ever seen.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. Like, it's not just him. Like, did you see that picture of Patrik Laine on Media Day? Oh, man. Like, it's just, you get chills almost watching this stuff. Like, it's amazing stuff. So, but yeah, like, the comments are really, really incredible. And Pascal Vincent, too, seems really happy to be where he is. Of course, he said he kind of knew Marty St. Louis, not necessarily super closely before. And he said he actually had other opportunities to be an assistant coach in the NHL elsewhere, but they didn't really materialize. But he ended up being the coach in Laval. But maybe the biggest thing, Jesse, before we move on, is the fact that he has said that when they looked at him, they were scouting him, but when he was coming over to Winnipeg, they said that everywhere that Patrik Laine went, whether it was international tournaments or for his teams over in Europe when he was playing there, even for Winnipeg, when he was in the spotlight in these big time moments, that's when he showed up. He said that Patrik Laine, from every time he's coached him, he always saw that when Laine was in, this is all in the podcast, by the way, just loosely translated for you guys. So this is not direct quote, but it's basically what he said. He said Patrik Laine turns that pressure into something really positive for him. And he basically said, as the podcast host said, in the oven that is Montreal, it could really turn into something extremely good for Patrik.
Yeah, you have to feel like it's only players that really like the pressure are choosing Montreal. Like Patrik Laine, he had other opportunities to go place elsewhere. And it's actually quite remarkable. And I would say says a lot about his character and his opportunity to rebound back. The fact that he had so many opportunities, but then he comes into that pressure cooker in Montreal. You have to feel like he does love that pressure, that opportunity, kind of like Slav, like many other young players on this team. And they really want to allow that to really bring out the best in their game. So you have to feel like he just wants to be around people that love hockey. Like he said, there's no other better market in the world to play for, fans that are as passionate, an arena that's as loud, right? So, of course, we take this as such a huge compliment as Habs fan, and we just can't wait to see him succeed over here.
Super pumped. Let us know down below what you think of Pascal's comments and what you think about Laine again, because we always love talking about him. We'd love to hear from you. Let's move on quickly, though, Jesse. We got a lot to cover today, as always. We got to talk about this. This is crazy. So, on a recent appearance on BPM Sport as well, Pierre Lebrun, there's a lot of stuff coming out today. We got the training camp stuff that we're probably going to cover tomorrow. There's so much to get into, but this was really interesting, Jesse, to read this. On BPM Sport, this is their tweet. A quote from Pierre Lebrun said, "The Predators mentioned the name of Jacob Fowler when talking about Yaroslav Askarov trade talks, but there was no way the Montreal Canadiens would trade Fowler. And this was kind of a crazy thing to come out to me. It's like, yeah, I mean, you kind of figured that if Nashville's going to trade their top goalie prospect, arguably the top goalie prospect in the NHL, they'd want maybe a decent goalie back. I mean, I know they have Saros, but like maybe you'd want something a little further down the line. It makes sense. But Jesse, to hear that Montreal is just like, yeah, no, we're not moving this guy. I know Montreal has a ton of belief in him, and of course we do as well watching him. He is so phenomenal, and he does fairly get a lot of praise around the NHL circles for what he's been doing and how he's been winning. But to hear that Montreal, like, from Pierre LeBrun's mouth, that Montreal was just like not even interested at all in moving Fowler for Askarov, I think tells us a lot about how much faith the Habs are putting into their own prospects and their own development, but specifically how much potential they see in this amazing young goalie.
Absolutely. Just because there's certain intangibles with Jacob Fowler, right? You have to feel like, okay, maybe they would be asking for more than Fowler, but if they were asking even for Fowler and a draft pick, let's face it, Josh, like we got those. Like for me, it's like, was even a draft pick what kind of stopped them from doing this? Like, I feel like with Fowler, it's just somebody that they really highly value just in terms of the organization, in terms of the culture. And I don't know, like, I don't think that it was at the top of Kent's list, but you'd have to feel like part of his thought process is, what kind of message does it send trading a young prospect that's already playing well? Does that send a bad message to the rest of the organization? Because you definitely want to reward younger players. Like, as they said, like, we want to make space for young players that are playing well. If we say that they're playing well, we want to make room for them in the future to kind of grow. So again, you know, it's like Askarov is an amazing goalie. Yes, maybe there would have been that temptation to maybe kind of put the rebuild, you know, into the blender, just speed it up real quick. But at the same time, you have to like, you know, Kent Hughes' approach. Like for sure it's interesting. You have to kick tires on it, right? But kind of taking that approach of maybe asking a little bit too much, being comfortable with what you have in Fowler, those intangibles as well. To be honest, I'm pretty happy with Kent Hughes staying on, you know, basically neutral on this one.
Yeah, I think so too. And, you know, I think you're right about the kind of message that sends. And not only that, like Primeau's still not that old. Like he's starting to get into that point where you're starting to really know what a goalie is, right? And at the same time, like, if you're in contention mode and you have an opportunity to trade a young prospect that's performing very well for a legitimately really good player that you know is going to impact your lineup today and you want to go for a cup this year, yeah, I think that's a situation where you do it. But trading a young prospect for another young prospect that's of a bit of a higher caliber, that's a bit further along, you're trading a little bit of uncertainty for a bit more certainty, but at the same time, just let your guy ride out. There's no urgency to bring in a guy like Askarov. I mean, if you could do it, but not for the price of Fowler. So I think that's really, really cool to hear that there's no way Montreal would end up doing this, at least from the mouth of Pierre LeBrun. Let us know what you think. Would you have done this trade if Nashville came knocking to Montreal? I have a funny feeling a lot of you are also going to say no. But final topic for today, Jesse. I want to talk about something Arpon Basu said recently. There was an Ask Me Anything on Reddit. It was great. Some of Arpon's answers were phenomenal. As always, again, and I'll link that down below if you want to look through all his answers. But there was one thing that caught my eye, Jesse, and it was a particular comment kind of saying how, you know, Montreal has a bunch of UFAs. There's a bunch of guys. Like, you got Dvorak, you got Jake Evans, you got Armia, you got Savard, and you have even some more. So he's like, well, who's going to get moved, right? Like, which one of these guys is most likely? And Arpon answered this way. He said, well, with Kent saying he would be willing to hang on to some impending UFAs if the Habs are in the mix, which we talked about in yesterday's video, there's a possibility none of them are traded, but if the Habs are far from a playoff spot, and let's face it, they probably will be, as he says, and I would tend to agree, but you never know, I think Savard will be the one to go. I could easily see Armia taking less money to stay past this season. He loves it here. Jesse, this is very interesting as I'm going to bring up David Savard's stats first. Again, a very solid player and has really worked well, had some great chemistry with multiple Habs defensemen when he had that little time with Hudson, but especially this past season, it was very notable for playing with Arber Xhekaj. I want to talk about Savard first. What are your thoughts on this? Like, you even said yesterday when you're talking about UFAs, he might be that kind of guy that you tend to hold on to if you're winning games. But I guess if Montreal is end up last in the division, he's kind of that guy that would probably have the most value. So I guess it makes sense.
He's a guy that would have the most value, especially going into the playoffs. You have to feel like Kent is going to be getting some very good offers. David Savard in the playoffs, blocking shots, locking it down in the defensive zone. We know that he can definitely do all these things. With all due respect, to the right of this, to Arpon on this, though, I have to feel like the biggest kind of deciding factor on this, on whether they are moving Savard or not, will be the play of Mailloux, of Reinbacher underneath him, because they're just going to be going with whoever gives them the best chance of winning. If these young guys show that they're ready, that's when it creates a little bit of opportunity. And I don't see a trade, even if it does happen, happening till well into the season, midway or thereafter, because you definitely, if you're making a move like that, you want to make sure that those young guys can handle it. We already have a young decor, right? So, but we see that the kind of the writings on the wall, we got so many young guys kind of coming in. Savard's in his contract here. It's just going to be a question, can these young guys take up those minutes? Because if they are, by the end of this season, Kent Hughes will make that move.
That's so interesting too. Yeah, there's so much competition with the guy on an expiring contract. Look, there's also like, I know this like never happens, but a team trading a guy away at the deadline just to sign him back, it does happen. It's just very rare. So you never know with a guy like Savard if there's a spot open for next year. He's done so many good things with the young guy, so I wouldn't mind that. But Jesse, I want to go back to the other thing that he said, and that is our boy Yoel Armia, who, by the way, if you guys forgot, set a career high in goals last year, and he had a big stretch. I don't know if it was 8 points in 6 games or 8 points in 8 games at one point in the second half of the year. Now, again, his Corsi 4 was not very good last year. You know, you want to be at least at 50%. He was at 40, which means the other team controlled a lot more of the shot attempts, but he also had a really slow start, Jesse, and we can't forget that he was waived to start the year. The Habs didn't want his contract on the main team. They had younger guys they wanted to play. But this guy turned it around like crazy. He has become, he's been playing a lot of power play, a lot of penalty kill. He's been the extra attacker when they needed a guy. His effort has just shot up a ton. I have loved Yoel Armia playing recently, not to mention he seems to be close with Laine already. So to hear from Arpon that there's definitely a world where Armia signs a pretty cheap deal, because at 3.4 now, I don't know, what are we talking, 2.5 per year for a couple of years, to be around Laine, to be around this team, to be that kind of do-it-all guy. I really love the idea of this.
Yeah, if we could see that consistency from him this season, absolutely, I would be so happy doing that, because we know it's not just the goal scoring, but this guy's solid on the PK. But let's look at his scenario, right? He's a Finnish player who maybe wasn't having as much fun at the rink, then kind of work with some coaches to kind of get into more of a
Winnipeg player too.
Positive Winnipeg connection as well. That's right, Josh. Who then went on to really improve his game under this Montreal Canadiens organization. Of course, we're referring to his countryman, Patrick Laine, as well, right? They both have this connection where Patrick's learning to just kind of have fun playing hockey again. And that was the most important thing for Armia, was just kind of doing a little bit of that coaching, right? Of just kind of staying in that present moment, having fun with it. We know that Marty helps with that so much. The big question for Armia will be, can he really continue that into next year? I mean, studying his numbers in the past, there's a lot to say that, you know, he can continue that. Absolutely. And he could be a solid contributor for our team if he can do so. You have to feel like putting in this work, you know, both on the ice and off the ice, is definitely going to help him moving forward. Really interested to see what he can do, and, you know, if the same thing can be helping Laine as well.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to seeing him and Laine share the ice together. Maybe not on a line consistently, but here and there, or you never know what's going to happen. I think it'd be cool to have them on the ice together. But let us know what you think about this. Savard and Armia, there's some surprising stuff coming out of this AMA that is linked down below. But on that note, that'll do it for this episode of Habs Digest. If you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, subscribe. Guys, subscribe, please. We're trying to hit 15K. It's a crazy goal. I know it is, and I know you know it is, but we're trying. And hey, you know, shoot for the stars. You know, shoot for the moon. If you miss, you're still gonna land amongst the stars. Whatever, that's fine. I'm Josh Gosse, my co-host Jesse Poirier. We'll catch you in the next one.